Morning, gang. So after yesterday morning's video, I decided to do a part two to it because there were a lot of questions that came in and comments that came in on some of the comments. And of course, my email blew up. So people had a bunch of questions. So I kind of want to touch on some other stuff. Okay. And so, like I said yesterday, trying to, narrow it down to your local area, or narrow it down to an area, starting within a part of the country where you're going to be able to fit in, what's going to meet your lifestyle. I used the example yesterday, Boston to Mississippi or whatever it would be. And, there could be a whole bunch of different things that come into play here. One of them, and again, determining the general area is what is your goal? What do you want to do? I mean, do you want to be out somewhere? I mean, obviously, I'm going to assume, okay, that everybody is trying to get to some sort of more conservative state, just because preppers, by definition, are primarily conservative people. But what are your intentions? Do you want just a lot of land where you can be away from people? I mean, I think that's kind of common, but you can do that anywhere. You could find a lot of land in Washington State, nice blue state, and you can find the land. But so, what are you doing? I mean, are you moving because you want to be self-sufficient food-wise? Okay, could that mean you want to garden, you want to raise livestock, whatever it would be? Well, there's different places that are going to be better for that. I mean, gardening is going to be a lot more difficult out in the desert southwest than it is going to be in, say, the Midwest or maybe parts of the Southeast. Okay, and if you want to garden, I mean, this will sound really silly, but what's the soil type? Okay, is it hard clay? All right, then ahead of time, hey, I've got to build gardens, kind of like what I've got going on. If you're in more of that Midwest area, you're going to have better soil for planting straight in the ground without as much prep work, okay, which of course means money. So, just simple things like that. If you want to raise livestock, what kind of livestock do you want to raise? Do you want to raise cattle? Do you want to raise chickens, whatever? Okay, now, raising cattle, hey, that might work out in the desert Southwest where it's, might not work so well somewhere else. So, again, something of what's your goal? Okay, what do you want to do? For me, I've never raised livestock in my life. I really had no intention to, but I wanted to be near a lake because I could fish, okay, for proteins or whatever. So, I mean, that was part of our decision. Then you get to other things. What stage are you in life? I mean, are you 20s, 30s, something where, you can get out and hump it real hard, to do a lot of the physical labor? Are you my age? Are you retired where you're not going to be able to do as much? How much do you need to be already completed before you get there? I mean, buying, a raw land at age 75 and say, hey, I'm going to build a house and I'm going to farm it. Okay. Do you have the physical stamina to do it? So you get questions like that. But let's say you're in your 30s, okay, and you want to do this. Great. Are you going to homeschool your kids? What's the school system like? I mean, some of these are real common sense things that you think about when you move anywhere. But for a prepper, you're adding one to another, to another, to another. And, you get out in rural areas out of, away from the cities. I mean, for the most part, a lot of the inner city school systems suck, okay? And, so people move out to the suburbs where there's better school systems. Well, now, it's kind of a curve. You get to the same with the rural areas just because there aren't as many teachers and there aren't as many students, so they don't get as much funding, and you go from there. I mean, now there's good schools and bad schools everywhere. I'm not trying to generalize in that respect. But, it's something else that you need to look at. What's your family situation? So, if you've got kids, great. Okay, what are the kids going to do for entertainment? Okay, if you get out in the middle of the country somewhere, there's not going to be piano lessons, t-ball leagues, whatever for them to go. I mean, my Mrs. Pinball and I talk about this all the time, where we live. Great place at our age. I wouldn't want to be a kid here. I mean, I'll go into the grocery store and there'd be some, teenager or whatever. You can always tell they're a teenager because you put beer up on the counter. They got to call somebody else to ring it up because they can't do it if they're not 21. And, the conversation will start as they're ringing up groceries or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, I can't wait to get out of here. Why? Because there's really nothing to do. I mean, there's not a movie theater within an hour of me. There's not a bowling alley within an hour of me. There's not a mall anywhere. Kids aren't going to go hang out at Walmart. So that's where you get into that sort of stuff. So, you kind of got to look at the whole picture. What's the quality of life your kids are going to have too, if you've got them. Okay. So then you get into other things. Now, for the most part, again, being conservative, and most red states are 2A friendly. Okay, but now how 2A friendly? Okay, is it an open carry state? Is it a CCW state? Whatever it would be. Okay, I mean, we left Nevada. Nevada was an open carry state. I didn't have to do anything to, walk around with a sidearm on me. No big deal. Got to Tennessee, much more red than Nevada, but I had to, well, I didn't have to, but most people will have to take a class to get their CCW to carry. I mean, military was exempt, hence the reason I didn't have to take the class. But, you get into something like that. Get into other things that you might want to consider. What are your medical needs? Do I need to be near a hospital? Am I in relatively good health? And, your general hospital will suit you fine. Or do I have underlying medical conditions where, heart issues or diabetes or whatever it is, whereby, I need a level 1, level 2, level 3 hospital around. Okay, well, now you could still wind up in a red state, but you might wind up closer to a city than you might have liked. I mean, University of Knoxville Hospital is the closest major medical center for me, and that's about an hour and 20 minutes away. Okay, so if something really bad happens to me, they get a life flight me there. That's the only way that's going to happen. Even the regular hospital, the general hospital for me is still half an hour away. All right, so you look into those sorts of things. That comes into play. So like I said, a lot of this is internal looking at yourself. So once you start narrowing it all down, it's like, okay, my job and my commute and what I want to do and, all the different things I talked about yesterday and all the things I talked about today. Now you've come into this general idea. Great. And it's like, wonderful. We've decided we're going to look at wherever, South Carolina, for example. Okay. And so now you start looking in a wide area. Okay. It's like, okay, we don't want to be near the city. Great. That leaves the rest of the state. Well, we don't want to be near the coast. Okay. So that, brings, you start narrowing it down. So now you start getting into away from the needs, if you will, and you start getting into the wants. And you start looking online, you go, hey, honey, look, this city is affordable and it's got a low crime rate and, it's close enough to this city where I could get a job and yada, yada. You go, hey, this city's great. Okay. Now, remember this part. Nobody puts up bad pictures on the internet. I mean, I can't tell you when we flew out here to Tennessee to come look at, I think we came and looked at like 7 or 8 houses that we had found online. And, found a realtor, flew out here and took a look. I'd say half of them easy. We looked at the house, we didn't even have to go in. It's like, no. I mean, the pictures look nothing like the house did actually. Okay. So, I mean, again, you drive around the town, okay. You start seeing, I don't know, homeless sitting on the street corner, will work for food or whatever. Driving around in the evening, you see a drug deal go down, okay, don't want to be around here. So, there's a lot that comes into play too. It's really important. Once you find an area you think you might like, go visit. Okay, and I'm not saying take a 2-week vacation, but take a long weekend. Call up a realtor and say, hey, we want to come down for the weekend. Say, what is today? Today's the 11th of January or something. Call up a realtor and say, hey, we want to come down the weekend of the 1st of February or whatever falls in there. We'll come in on Friday, stay Saturday and Sunday. Can you, come up, this is the criteria for what we're looking for. Can you help us find specific things? And a realtor, that's realtor's job, okay? They'll help you find houses and tell you about communities and things like that. They'll interview you to help find what you want. After all, they get paid to do that. But it's really important to go make the trip to that area to go see if it actually does fit what you've read online, okay? You know, every city out there say, oh, we're the greatest city to, come look at our website. We're a fabulous place to live, okay? Some are, some aren't, okay? I really doubt that the Chamber of Commerce in Chicago's, putting out something that says, don't move to Chicago. We have murders here every weekend, 20, 30, 40 of them. They're talking about all the great restaurants and everything like that. They just kind of ignore that part. So, look into it. Once you can narrow something down by your research, then start getting the locals' opinion to it, okay? And when you're there, go into the stores, talk, if you say, hey, this neighborhood or this area looks really good, and you see somebody picking up their mail, stop. Hey, you got a couple minutes. I'm looking at moving the area. Can I ask you a couple of questions? Some people may give you a bird. Other people would say, hey, what do you want to know? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've sat out here and I'm working in the yard and somebody drives by and they might be looking at, one of the parcels around me and says, what can you tell me about the area? And I'll just tell them honestly, this is what it is. And some people are like, hey, this sounds great. And other people are, 2 minutes in, they're like, this isn't for me. I made a comment on one of the comments yesterday that a lot of the people around me still have our Trump signs up in the yard. Okay, obviously the election's 3 months past here at this point. Why? Okay, it's pretty much a telltale tip to any liberal. It's like, okay, there's a lot of Trump people around here. You aren't going to fit in. All right, so, my American flag flies on my front porch every day. Sorry, this is, if that offends you, you don't want to live here. So, there's a lot to look at, and just, take it methodically. Don't jump in and say, oh, you know what? A bunch of preppers moved to the Ozarks or a bunch of preppers moved to Tennessee or, what? I always heard Texas was great. Okay, yeah, Texas is great. I lived there for a while. Now, as a conservative, I sure as hell don't want to live anywhere around Austin. Okay, I mean, that's, skinny jeans, soy boy like crazy. Forget it, even though UT's there. But, there's good and bad everywhere. You just have to look at what's going to fit you the best. And as we've all said, lots of comments, all the jokes, you say, don't come to my state, we're full. Idaho was classic for that. It's like they didn't want the Californians at all. And the running joke was, if you're from California and go to Idaho, take the plates off your car, because otherwise you're going to come out, your car windows are going to be broken. There's a lot of truth to that, okay? People that live in the area are very protective of it. We've got one person around us here who's from Connecticut, and even though he's a conservative, but the guy is a complete ass, and nobody wants anything to do with them, okay? Then we've got other people that are from, up north or whatever, and, they assimilated right in. Obviously, I don't have a Southern accent, but the locals here, they all took to me, because we had something in common and I wasn't trying to, force anything on them or whatever. It's like, okay, what do you guys do here? And, I have similar interests and we go. So, kind of wanted to do a part 2 on this one, just other things to think about. I'm sure there's 500 other things you can talk about, but the main point, what I'm saying is, take it from the top down and take it slowly and think about anything and everything you can. It took me and Mrs. Pinball a year to find everything. I said in other videos. We looked at Idaho, Montana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and eventually wound up in Tennessee because it met our criteria. So, but mine are going to be different than yours. Everybody's are different. Nobody can tell you this is how you got to do. You want to raise cows, I'm not the person to tell you what to do because I don't have a clue. So that's what I wanted to give you today, part 2, and we'll kind of go from there. So, still somewhat prepping oriented, I guess, if you will. Have a good one, y'all. Pinball out.